I'm Lee Bristow, host of Saros Insights and Director of Cyber and AI Governance. At Saros, we partner with the world's most recognized brands to make the complex simple. My aim is to deconstruct the strategies of Ireland's top business leaders, from AI governance, digital transformation, and some that are even scaling through acquisition. We're playing a bigger game, uncovering the human stories behind the technology. Welcome to our show. So who is Niall Mackey? For our audience that don't know you or TopSec, maybe you can give us a quick view of your mission that you've been on since joining the organization, and maybe your wider career and the threads that have joined it all together.
Well, I started out as a techie. So I went to college and became a developer, and went, like everyone did back in the 80s, because I'm an old git, we went over to England, and I think of a class of 60, 50 odd of us ended up living in various hovels around London until we all got decent jobs. So I ended up working for the Masons, would you believe it? So in the Royal Masonic Hospital in Stamford Brook, and started running started programming for us, and ended up running their dev team. And it transpired that I could actually talk to humans, because most techie guys, as you know, are a bit anal and a bit introverted. So I got pushed.
So you could code and talk.
Exactly. And so I kind of got pushed to the front by everybody else. So you talk to the people, like the management and stuff like that. So I ended up being the manager there, and then moving on, ended up working in insurance then for Bank of America, doing some really innovative stuff in Richmond, which was actually really cool. They let us, we had a paperless office system back in the day, which most people don't even have now, back in the early 90s. Literally there was no paper. It came in and was scanned, and everything was OCR'd, and it was all very cool, and I was heavily involved in that. And then moved on to working with Nokia, actually. So Nokia was actually quite cool. So all around the mobile internet side of things, so that again was a lot of fun, and again in technology and evangelizing about all the stuff we take for granted now, all the stuff around all the location-based services and real-time updates and all that kind of stuff was stuff that myself and a couple of the German guys actually developed inside of Nokia.
Going back to the core theme around technology and technology transformation, stepping into TopSec, looking at cybersecurity primarily, again, that also was quite a change from the infrastructure that you were typically looking at into the cybersecurity. How long have you been with TopSec now?
God, it's nearly 18 years.
Okay.
Seems to have flown by, yeah.
And if you look at the last sort of 18 years, because it's been primarily focused around security, cybersecurity in that email space, how has it changed over the last 18 years?
Yeah, when I started, all the security stuff was basically on-prem. So 80 to 90% of the stuff was not on-prem, 10% was in the cloud. So it was gateway services, gateway security, and that's completely flipped now. So nowadays it's 99% cloud-based, like 365, Google, and very few companies now are on-prem with their solutions. So that's completely flipped. So it's completely cloud-based. Our solution has completely evolved over that time as the threats evolved, and it's actually had 3 or 4 iterations of change to become a pure cloud play that can literally spin up anywhere in the world like that. But it didn't used to be like that when I started. It was very much on our own servers in our own data centers, but as things came along, especially the first big thing was actually the link-based attacks, the URLs and clicks and the ransomware and stuff. So we were lucky. We actually had something. It's funny, we had quite a very smart, but again, very introverted IT director at the time, CTO, and he didn't realize what he'd had. He developed this linked verifier. So if you clicked on a link, it would check it in real time to see if it was actually dangerous or not. And no one else really had this, and he didn't really think much of it. And I remember him telling me through this new feature. I was going, whoa, back up a second. What does that do again? And
Just explain it.
Slowly to a layman, even though I'm reasonably technical. And I was going, Jesus, people are going to love that, and they did. And that really grew the company a lot, just by that one big change, because people were starting to get hit with link-based attacks, and this was a way of counteracting them. And then it evolved. We saw the whole attachment type stuff, and clever macros, and now of course it's all the very clever phishing attacks, and now augmented by AI. Now AI hasn't made it really any more sophisticated, but it's democratized it. So we're seeing a real increase in attacks, and it's gone down the actual value chain. So before, like the good attacks were only aimed at, say, large enterprise like health authorities, government agencies, all that kind of stuff, multinationals. Now the same sophistication of attack is actually targeted at your local SME, your local lawyer, solicitor, manufacturer, or whatever. It's been completely, because AI has made it easy to do those attacks in a distributed and low cost way.
When you're thinking about SMEs and enterprise, they've gone through quite a massive transformation process, right? As you mentioned, from on-prem into cloud, Office 365, Google Workplace. From a security perspective, simplification is becoming a lot more of the norm. Previously was always about multiple layers, multiple hops, almost, creating that onion layer. That was very much the sort of 2010s narrative. With email security and with the collapse of some of those email securities into the likes of Office 365 or into Google Workplace, what's the, firstly, I think from an architectural perspective, what is the narrative in terms of having that layered component, and then secondly, just in terms of the independent component as well. So, how are you addressing that from an email security architectural perspective?
Yeah. So I suppose there's two things there. You're absolutely right. There's a lot more and very sophisticated technology built into both Google Workplace and 365 and Defender, and the different levels of protection they can give you, all the way up to now E7, I think, which was launched there recently.
Yeah.
But what we see though as well is that, like, even no matter, even with Microsoft, on its own, and they've actually come out in November, the product manager actually said this, on its own, it's not enough. And we actually can prove this. We actually do, we have a plugin, there's a thing called the Graph API in 365, and we can actually plug our system into that. So in real time, as an email, both internal or external, drops in, we do all the checks in real time to actually see if there's anything wrong with that email, and like whether it be attachment links, etc., phishing, social engineering, all those kind of things. But more importantly, post delivery, we're seeing a big trend in, say, up to 5 days. Like an email might actually be safe when it was actually delivered and came through Microsoft and came through us, but when it lands in the inbox, then 5 days later, or an hour later, or 10 minutes later, it's then weaponized. So that link has now been weaponized. That attachment now has a link inside it, or has a macro that's now active. A social engineering construct that has no payload, that wasn't identified earlier, is now the latest threat intelligence. And now it says that's actually dangerous because it's taking someone on a path. And so what we do in real time is we will actually, you could be looking at your Outlook client and that email will just disappear. And so people go, whoa, what happened? And that's literally, you're having real time threat intelligence now. It's a real game changer applied to your inbox. So absolutely 365 and Google do great jobs, but they do need augmentation. And we do this thing called a silent assessment for a month or two. We don't even try and ask them to believe our white papers or anything else. Just put it on, it does nothing, it sits in the background, and after a month you can actually see all the things like the malware, the ransom, the links, the attachments, the spam, etc., that have happened in that period that 365 itself, the native protection, actually misses. And 90% of the customers who do that silent assessment sign up straight away, because and even inside our own system, layers, I know you were giving out about layers, but layers are so important because security is so hard to do. There's nobody who's perfect at defending against, because you don't know what you're defending against. It's the unknown unknowns, and so it's almost like a Swiss cheese type thing, lining them up. And inside of our own platform, we would use other technologies. We would use things like Sophos, Bitdefender, Google Threat Intelligence, all these other things. And it changes. The guys add different tools on top of our own intelligence that we've been doing for, 20 odd years. So by doing that, you give yourself a way better chance of protecting the end user. You can never say someone's ever going to be 100% protected, but you're giving them a major chance.
I think the stacking is where I kind of have a challenge with. I don't think you need those extra hops, but passing it off to an API or doing real-time calls, it actually proves the security because you have consistent access to it. So I think from an architectural perspective, I think that is really where it is heading to, and it is very much becoming the norm, if you will.
And in fact, so much so, sorry to interrupt, Microsoft are actually launching a new API soon to actually make it even easier to work with them on top of the Graph API for email security. So they've realized that this is because it's still 90%, as you know, of all threats that compromise organizations originate in an email. Still, like, you have all this other stuff, cool stuff all around, but the traditional old school email is still the most dangerous thing that could happen to an organization.
I recently read a headline report. I didn't look at the facts behind it. The numbers just sounded really good. But, we were talking about the economics of phishing types attacks. And based on the FBI IC3 report from 2024, they estimated 2.7 billion was as a direct result of business email compromise. And, I think really that kind of talks to part of the reason why I wanted to have this conversation, which is, why does the phishing attack vector continue to be such an economic driver for bad actors?
Because it works. It works. I mean, so people are social creatures. They want to interact with things, and we see that, and that's why the technology is so important to help them, because whether it's, you see people who are either ultra busy, someone like yourself who's always on the go. I've done it myself once. Like, an email comes in and it's from a trusted source, and you see, and they said you something urgent, you click on it, and I remember actually when the day I did it, I went, I shouldn't have done that. And luckily our system actually caught it. It came up with a red thing, like, saying, no, we're not letting you access that content. Contact your admin. Bold not. But are also people who are bored. We've seen that in people who are who've got very little to do, almost like, I'm just going to click it to see what happens. Like, and there's all the in between where people are actually convinced to go down a path, because I mentioned some of the actual social engineering around the phishing is very clever, and especially using AI now. It's not your Nigerian princes anymore. It's very sophisticated, especially say if they manage to get access to your account, because then say things like AI is great, but say imagine your account gets compromised now and you're using Copilot. So Copilot, then they can ask Copilot to look at all the information in your inbox and find anything to do with it, like an invoice or POs or business you're doing. And suddenly within seconds, it can construct a really sophisticated phishing email to the people involved in this, based on exactly the same language you would use, using the same terms, the same PO number, same everything. And that's very hard to defend against, because that's in the same tone, it's got the right information. Like, that's a really tough scenario for someone to not be compromised by.
You're essentially describing the vendor email compromising vector. So, one of the key elements around email security is ensuring that you have two-factor authentication on your access to your mailbox.
Yes.
And I think that is really the reason fundamentally what you're saying over there is that if a compromise occurs, the area of attack might not be internally within your organization. It might be with your suppliers, your distribution chain, where they're trying to exfiltrate money. So that would be key personnel within the finance department, potentially, or in operations, that would have a budget and would be buying things, spending money. I think that is a really great example of an attack. And it also links back to something that happened relatively recently in Ireland as well. So that was, again, human interaction automatically assuming that because they received it from a trusted source in line with other emails, made a payment of 5 million.
It's and these threats are very sophisticated, and unless you have the right protections in place, and we have a thing called VIP phishing protection. So you identify these vulnerable people who do these kind of deals, and in your the C-suite, people in finance, procurement, these kind of things, that they get an extra layer of protection because they're obvious targets for these kind of scenarios.
the reality is that economic vehicle is spinning very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And if you can get 5 million off a hit, it's a pretty good,
It's a great return.
it's a great return.
And the cost to do it is very little for these, again, because it's easy to automate now.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that you were mentioning was around the ability to accelerate emails going out. So that would be around the polymorphic phishing, where it looks like it's different emails, but it's essentially trying to figure out what will be the trigger in your case, what will be the thing that will make you do something that would be out of the norm.
Get you to engage, exactly, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we're all human. We're all we've got other things on our mind. We're not always 100% focused on work and what you're supposed to be doing, and so they take advantage of that. And there's usually, like, as you know, there's a lot of calls to action. It's usually this. It's always something that's important. It's also something that is going to actually impact themselves if they don't actually execute it. So they're worried about their own job, and they usually, the really sophisticated ones, say, well, no. If you're on holiday and somewhere like, say, that's uncontactable or very hard to get to, and then they'll actually spoof an email from your account to me, to PA or to someone in finance. Or can you authorize this urgent PO or this payment to this company? And especially if they're new, they also, especially on LinkedIn, they actually check for new starters. And so they'll actually target those people who started new jobs, who don't really know the culture, don't really know how things work, but are then in a vulnerable position in that business that can actually impact financially to that organization. And they target those with these kind of sophisticated, like, coordinated attacks that know you're on holiday, know this is a new person, know they don't know all the systems, and take advantage of that.
So let's talk about the technical piece there, because there was a technical piece that would immediately address that potential risk from a control perspective, and that would be improving your DNS security. So that would be implementing things like DMARC, using capabilities like SPF and DKIM. So maybe just to kind of remove the acronyms for a moment. So SPF is Sender Policy Framework. DKIM is Domain Keys Identifier. And your DMARC is your domain-based message authentication reporting and conformance, which is basically your policy. So do you want to give a little bit of an overview of what those are?
In essence, what it is nowadays the main security vendors, like they mentioned Google, Microsoft, and all the vendors like ourselves who protect people, are looking to see if your domain is secured correctly. So if your domain is not secured correctly, that means I can go onto your domain and actually pretend I'm you and send it to either internally to your organization, like those attacks that we were talking about, to the finance department or whatever, or else.
And the terminology being spoofing. That was a key thing. Yes, is basically spoofing the CEO while he was away, and then the mechanism of reducing that is this.
And reputational damage as well, spoofing you to another organization, and like again the scenario I gave about, like, compromising the account, knowing about POs and stuff, and then spoofing you to them, and actually being able to, and they'll trust it because it's coming from your domain, because it is. And it's actually very easy. And the DKIM is about signing. So basically every third-party app, like, say, Salesforce or any CRM systems you're using, or any finance or accounting systems you're using, having them, and especially if they're internet-based ones, having them authenticated on the domain, it's called DKIM signing. And so making sure that those are all the approved systems that can only send from your domain. So anything that isn't one of those and signed cannot actually send from your domain. So the idea is to get to a thing called policy equals reject, which it sounds a bit technical, but that means basically nobody can impersonate you, and also, but more importantly, I think as important, as well as the securing your domain, is people are going to start having deliverability issues. So when you're sending emails to people who actually want to receive them, if you're not actually configured correctly, then their systems will actually reject them, and they won't actually be able to receive the email, either rejected outright, or it'll go into spam, or it'll go into other, and you won't be able to get to them. So it's not even just about security, it's also about deliverability. And to be fair now, Ireland's quite good. I've seen a massive improvement in the last 2 years. The UK kind of was the vanguard of this, and we work a lot in the UK as well. And so if you look at most UK, almost all governments, in fact, not just some, and and all large enterprise will have properly configured DMARC records. And to be fair, in Ireland now, because we've done a lot of them ourselves, hundreds of them here, with all the councils and the large entities and say the HSE, etc. Like they're now all completely correctly set up for on DMARC, so those domains are actually protected. But SMEs aren't. And so, and they need to actually, so that's why we're working very hard with our partners to actually find a way of making it affordable for them to become DMARC compliant, because it's not even just about even protection. It's also about them being able to operate. So if they're sending out to a mailing list or trying to contact their customers, if they can't do that, then they go out of business. And it's a very serious issue for them.
One of the things that we were chatting about before coming online was around the fact that TopSec is one of the few independent email security providers in the European theater.
Yeah.
So having a look at the independent angle when it comes to TopSec, the thing that I think is going to be very interesting is around sovereignty in the European theater. Whether it's around email, whether it's around infrastructure, whether it's around software, all the layers will be reconsidered, I think, going forward. What is your view going in that regard?
Well, we saw this coming a while ago, because this is one of our many iterations of evolving our platform, as I was saying. And our current iteration allows, like when you're setting up a client on our system, you actually choose the geography you want to be in. So if you're a UK customer and you're worried about, like, you want to be, because of Brexit and everything, you just want all your data in the UK, absolutely no problem. Just as a part of the setup, you're there. US the same, Canada the same, Australia, EU. So it's literally all configurable at setup, because we saw this, because a lot of our competitors can't actually do that. They actually have these massive data centers, often here actually, but like that's okay if you're in the EU, but it's not okay if you're in the UK or the US or even Canada. Canada are quite hot on this as well. Like our Canadian customers insist all their data has to stay there. So we saw this coming a long time, and we architected our system to be geolocated in each jurisdiction, and then so you can also then apply the local data compliance laws as well, because obviously GDPR applies here, but then you have other laws in other countries, whether it be HIPAA or and ISO is pretty standard, but it's been able to actually respond to that and tailor to the customer, because it's a lot of people are just assuming that it's done, but it's not. If they actually ask the question of their provider, where's my data actually residing? And even we mentioned Microsoft as well, they struggle with that question when you actually really drill down. They're like, can it ever drift into, say, if I'm an EU customer, can it go to the UK? Can it go to the US and Canada? And the answer is they don't always know, and it can.
I think the sovereignty element is going to come up quite a bit, especially also around just on the ownership side of things. But just in terms of another element that I think is also going to be quite important, again, looking at the sovereignty piece, but having localized threats. You mentioned something along the line, well, you mentioned earlier that DMARC configuration is actually pretty mature in an Irish and a UK perspective, but not so much in the US and North America, essentially.
Yeah.
When you're looking at those threats as an example, are you seeing kind of regional threats? How are you addressing that? How are you retooling your platform and also addressing those threats?
Yeah. So that's where we're using AI a lot, actually. So this is where we're seeing, because like AI is really good at analyzing what's going on locally, the information, summarizing it and stuff. So what we've actually done is, as you mentioned, not just even geographically from country to country that changes, but even amongst certain groups of customers, say our government, kind of local government customers, that they will have a different range of threats that someone like a private enterprise entity, like a little group of solicitors or like some retail outlets and stuff will have. And so our system will do it actually let them know, and we've kind of the community based awareness. So we'll actually let them know if someone's getting targeted with this type of attack, it's probably going to go through that whole, because it's targeted to that sector, that segment, and we'll actually warn them. So it's very community focused, and so the AI helps us actually identify those things, those patterns, and actually in real time as they're actually happening, and give the warnings to our customers. Yeah, because that's key. And again, it also gives you local. I think it's important local knowledge, because every market is different. Whether Ireland is different to the UK, is different to the US, is different to Canada, is different to Australia. But a lot of people don't take that into consideration. They think that one size almost fits all, and it absolutely does not.
So Niall, firstly, thank you very much for taking the time to chat to us. I've got one final question to kind of pose to you. When it comes to email security, where do you think the future of email security is going to be in the next 5 to 10 years, given the advent of AI and potentially even the ability to tool up your own environment and your own security going forward?
Yeah.
Where do you see email security going?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I've been around a long time in email, and I was told 10 years ago, email is going away. All these other messaging platforms are going to take over. And as you probably know, like, all we're seeing is growth on email, business email especially, every single year. So email is not going anywhere. That's a fact. And AI is obviously going to be a factor, but it's only going to be one factor. Like, so, the good thing is, I think a lot of people are scared of AI. Like, the good guys, the people who develop these things, we've been doing this a lot longer than the bad guys. And so they're reacting, they're using the tools that we're producing, that all these companies are actually producing, Google, Microsoft, etc. So we are always slightly ahead. Now, obviously, they will get wins, and but I think it's an arms race. But I think it's a winnable arms race, and as long as we keep doing what we're doing across the board, I think people shouldn't be scared. That's the first thing. So AI will be there, but it'll also be like augmented with all the other things we're doing currently. They're not going to go away, because we also know AI, I'm sure it'll get better as it evolves, but like hallucinates, makes mistakes. We all use it. We all see that happening day to day because we all use it, but it's also amazingly powerful. So it's amazingly powerful for the bad guys, but it's also amazingly powerful for us to fight them off. And so as long as those that ecosystem is staying in balance as we go forward, I think it's okay. I think it's not going away. I think Microsoft are actually really realizing this themselves as they've opened up this new API. So I think things will become more secure for the customers, because most people are on, especially businesses, are on 365. And because of what Microsoft are doing, and people like ourselves and other vendors, I think it will actually become a more secure environment going forward, rather than a less secure.
In 18 years, do you think we'll migrate back?
On-prem.
On-prem.
It's happening already. It's happening already.
I was thinking that.
It's happening already. People are actually bringing stuff back on-prem. Yeah, especially some of the bigger organizations like banks and things like that are actually going back, because also the economies of scale aren't there that they used to be, and they were developing their own, because they're scared of AI, they have their own AI and LLMs they're developing just for themselves, their own environment,
Thank you very much.